All right.
And we're back.
And we're here. So I always love it when somebody sends me a text message. Have you seen this documentary? Have you read this book?
Mm-hmm.
As if we have enough time to do that every week. But this one was, what do you think of Jennifer Dulos? Dulos.
OS, yeah.
And I had no clue what they were talking about.
Well, this is going on in another country, right?
No.
Oh, sorry.
No, it's going on in Connecticut.
Oh.
Maybe that's a different country for some people. But here's where it caught my attention. So a little background. It's a mother of 5 from Stamford, Connecticut. She went missing May 24th. So pretty recent, right?
Okay.
But the reason why it's making more headlines is because there's a lot going on here. A lot to unpack. And one of the things, so she was taking her kids to school. She dropped her kids off at school, and then she goes missing. Nobody's seen from her, heard from her, nothing. Her estranged husband, so I believe at the time she was living in an apartment, and her husband was living at the house, their house.
Mm-hmm.
And so he's the estranged husband, and he has a girlfriend. Her name is Michelle. I'm not even going to try to get her last name correct.
Okay.
His name is Dulos. Right? So old Futis and his girlfriend Michelle, they were actually arrested for tampering with evidence. Now...
Oh, wait, I've seen this on TV.
Yeah, so...
Yeah, this is big headlines. Why did I think it was some other country? I have this...
I don't know.
I brought up an article on
I'm not in your head.
And they kept referencing a water ski and wakeboard federation in Athens, Greece, released a statement Sunday night through Fotis Dulos, divorce attorney.
Yeah.
So does he have a second home in Greece, or is this just something that he is a part of, this water ski wakeboard federation?
Yeah, I don't know.
I don't know. That part's confusing. Go on. Sorry. Get back into the non-confusing part.
Okay. Normally, I'm the confusing part. Today, you'll be the confusing part. So, Futis and Michelle, they were arrested. And the reason why was they were spotted around dumpsters and storm drains depositing items. Now, when they collected these items, and it's not very clear on what the items are.
Right.
I did see one report saying, or maybe it was multiple reports saying that one of the items was a bloody sponge, but the items that they collected had Jennifer's blood on them. So that's pretty damning evidence. But also in this report, I saw that there's only been roughly 400 cases, murder cases, that have actually gone to trial without a body.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's uncommon.
So, and then the percentage of actually convicting somebody of that is very small, which is actually kind of funny because one of the detectives that we know, I was having drinks with, and they actually had a case that they didn't have a body. They brought it to trial and got the conviction.
Mm-hmm.
So that was interesting to, within the last week to hear that, and then to be diving into this Jennifer Dulos case. So she goes missing. Like I said, not much longer. The husband and the girlfriend were found depositing these items that have Jennifer's blood on them. So they arrest him. And they're arrested for tampering with evidence. And that's kind of where it sit, and that's basically it. Until his lawyer comes out with this new hypothesis, and they're calling it the Gone Girl hypothesis. And if anybody has ever watched Gone Girl, the whole idea is that she basically fakes a murder scene.
Her own murder.
Her own murder. But kind of the evidence is going to point that she was murdered and that the husband did it. She goes missing on her own and then eventually pops back up. And so they're saying that we don't know where her body is. We don't know if she's dead or alive. So they're kind of going off this idea of, well, we really think that there is some weight to this Gone Girl hypothesis. Now, the author of Gone Girl is actually extremely pissed off about this. Rightfully so, I guess, or I don't even know if it's rightfully so. I kind of question this. It's like,
well, my thought would be that her thinking is, oh shit, somebody's going to use this as a defense, and she might have been following this case and feel like they arrested the right people, and she's probably just upset that they're going to use her fictional story as a defense, and maybe these murderers or a murderer and somebody that participated in getting rid of the evidence and getting rid of the body might get off scot-free because of her good story that she put together and that she told.
Yeah, and this is an interesting story because it was with Gone Girl, it was one of the times where it was kind of a big deal. I remember the book being a big deal, and then the movie was coming out, and thinking, well, I should, let me read this book. So I read the book before I watched the movie, but I thought it was a good book. I wasn't like blown away by it, but a lot of my female friends loved it more than I did, and they really actually loved the wife's character being just so evil and so basically, she was a psychopath basically,
right?
And they really enjoyed that, and there was some twists and turns in the stories. So, but I always thought it was interesting how much, if I talked to a guy that read it, it was kind of the same thing that I got. It's pretty good. But I knew several female friends of mine that really liked it. Movie came out, didn't watch it for a very long time. It was probably years after. I think I actually watched it when it was on TV one day. So that shows you kind of how long. It wasn't like on a Netflix or anything. It was like on like TBS one day. But I was also pretty shocked that the book and the movie are very close, because my whole thing was like, let me read this book and then I'll watch the movie, because I haven't done that too many times in my life. And you always hear the book is way better than the movie. But this was an interesting case because the book and the movie are very similar. There's not a bunch of differences, I think she kind of wrote the book knowing, hey, this could be turned into a movie, and we don't have, let me write the book this way. Gillian Flynn, right?
Right.
She did Sharp Objects, right? Yeah, she did Sharp Objects.
That was based out of another country, right?
Yeah, Connecticut, the continent of Connecticut,
right? The great continent of Connecticut.
But here's where it becomes a little more interesting, because I thought, okay, well, maybe this lawyer's just a douchebag, right? And he's just coming up with this nonsense theory to kind of tamper with the jury.
Mm-hmm.
So this is some of the stuff I have issues with. So their lawyer says that Jennifer has went missing before, and that she went missing for years using a fake name after she had a dispute over money. Okay, this is what they claimed. What the family claims is, yes, she didn't go missing. but she went to Aspen and she went to LA to write a book under her pen name, Jennifer Bay. So it's kind of a half-truth story that the lawyer is telling.
But we don't see. It's not like she went and got a driver's license with using that name.
Right.
It just seems like she was going to write a book using a pen name, which is not such a strange thing. We talked about that just 2 weeks ago with one of the great true crime writers of all time, Anne Rule, used a pen name. Stephen King used a pen name at one time. It's not terribly uncommon.
What was his pen name?
Oh, I don't remember. It was so long ago. We're talking about
Stephen Queen.
Books that he put out probably in the 70s. I think he put them out under, and I'm guessing here, I think he put them out under the pen name because at one time he was an English teacher, and I think he was still teaching at the early stages of his writing career.
Right.
And he probably didn't want, parents or the community going, whoa, this guy's writing some crazy shit that's scaring people real bad. Maybe I don't want him teaching my teenage daughter or teenage boy.
Yeah.
Something like that.
Yeah, similar to why I became the captain. So here's where it gets a little twist in the story, though. Is now it's been reported two different ways. I heard that Jennifer wrote a novel. I think the lawyer is claiming, Futis's lawyer is claiming that she wrote a novel, a very quote unquote very dark novel that was similar to Gone Girl. And then I also saw reports that it was a 500-page manuscript. Now, I don't know what the difference is between a manuscript and a novel. You know what I mean? Like,
I couldn't tell you.
I'm not in that circle, so I don't know if it was
I also don't know the difference between a movie and a film.
There's right there.
I think some people just call them films to sound.
Well, I think to me, when I think movie and film, I've heard like film critics or film buffs say like a movie is something that you watch and you go, oh, that was all right. It was okay. It wasn't. It needs to be a little more epic. Where Star Wars is a film.
It's like a masterpiece.
Yeah, but or like some artsy film. But then you have, like...
it's like the difference between going to the grocery store and buying a steak and ordering Butcher Box. Same difference.
Maybe. It's the same difference between Connecticut, the state, and then Connecticut...
The great continent of Connecticut.
Yeah, so... No, but it's like, I think some people would say like a John Hughes movie. Because they were just meant to be kind of lighthearted, and then other people, I don't know, film. Anyways, manuscript. So I don't know. It doesn't say screenplay, so I don't think it was going to be adapted to TV or whatever. But supposedly that Jennifer Dulos, the mother of 5 that's missing since May 25th, she wrote a manuscript of about 500 pages that is very similar to Gone Girl. They also claim that Jennifer had about $14,000 worth of medical bills. And these, Futis's lawyer is saying that these are unexplained. They don't know what these are. And so I think he probably got a little criticism of why they're coming up with this Gone Girl hypothesis. And then so he laid out, here's a couple of the reasons why. The fact of the matter is that your client, Futis, and his girlfriend, Michelle, were found in multiple spots disposing of items that have Jennifer's blood on it. Now, if that never happened, maybe this Gone Girl hypothesis makes a little more sense. The other one, and I think this is really going to be the smoking gun and all of it, and I don't know if the detectives did their due diligence, but Futis's blood was found mixed with Jennifer's blood on basically inside the kitchen sink. And I've heard this multiple ways because it's so blank. A blanket statement of just blood mixtured with Jennifer's blood in the kitchen sink. I've heard this is, they found this in the kitchen drain. Also heard that they found this on the faucet, like on the right around where the water comes out. My question is did the detectives do their due diligence, and did Foodis ever claim to have been in her apartment? Because if he at some point stated that he's never been a part of her, in her apartment, then, I think that's a big smoking gun.
It was found in her apartment, not his?
Her apartment. He, from everything that I can tell, it seems like he's still living in the family's home. And what was kind of very odd about this is there's a picture of Foodis where he has a kind of a scruffy beard, not a big beard, but just kind of a little more than a day scruff. Mm-hmm. And he kind of, resembles Ben Affleck, which played the husband in Gone Girl. It's a similar vibe. So when they showed a picture of that, I went, oh, yeah, that's similar. Oh, the family claims that this lady was basically ingenious when it came to the creative. So it's one of those things where it's like, is this just some douchebag claim? Or is there some weight to this? And that's where I think I think we have 2 points of evidence that point to that this is probably not likely going to be the outcome. And if I had to bet, I'd bet this is not going to be the outcome. This is just some bad / clever defense. It's very similar to like a Casey Anthony. Well, we'll just throw out all these other theories, and that'll just distract everybody from the truth.
Right.
And then you'll just get off because of that.
I'm with you. I think it's a slightly clever defense to get out in front of this thing by his defense attorney and say, look, we might have a Gone Girl situation here, because without the body,
right.
The reason why they so few of these cases go to court without the body is just the simple fact that the first defense that they're going to go to and present is, we're here having a murder trial. We have no body. We don't even know if the victim is dead.
Right.
So what are we doing here having a murder trial? And that can be tough for some juries to get over, especially if there's not a whole lot of concrete evidence to point to the fact that a murder has been committed, or that the victim that we are at trial proceedings for is actually, in fact, dead.
Well, and you're supposed to, the person gets off if there's some reasonable doubt. Well, if you don't have a body, well, there's a reasonable doubt.
Right. So usually you see these things go to court and be successful when they have something else that would suggest that the person is, in fact, dead. The number one thing that I've seen is that it's blood. So if they find like a large amount of somebody's blood, they'll bring in doctors that say nobody could have lost this amount of blood and survived. So we have to go forward with the person is in fact dead, and we just don't have their body.
Yeah,
so,
I don't know if we have that in this case.
They do have some blood, as you were pointing out, and I don't know how much it is. There it does say there was blood spatter found in her garage that was her blood.
Yeah.
And then the article I found, the confusing one about the Greek water skiing federation or whatever, they're also pointing out that his blood is mixed with her blood found on her faucet.
Yeah.
At her sink. And like you said, they very well, and probably, I shouldn't say very well, I would be incredibly shocked if they didn't pull the drains and pull some of the piping from her apartment, looking for that blood. Usually that's a go-to when they think like, okay, somebody just did a really good job getting rid of the body.
Right.
That's a place that's very hard to get rid of that evidence, and often is overlooked by the killer who's trying to cover their tracks.
Yeah, and I think if they went after that information or they were diving into that aspect, law enforcement's not going to come out and show their hand on if they've done that and if they've received more evidence or not. Again, if he's made statements that he was never in the apartment, then
he's in big trouble.
Yeah, not so good. But
then factor this in too. Here's where you have to, if you can't find her remains, you have to take it the next step and ask the jury to make the leap of faith with you. And that leap of faith is quite simply this. One, even if he does say that he's been in her apartment, how low is the proper probability that her blood and his blood were both applied to that faucet at such a near point in time that they actually mixed?
Right.
That seems very tough to explain that away.
And there is Michelle, the girlfriend of Futis. I know there's no contact order and stuff like that, so I wonder if her lawyer is setting up to separate and conquer. Let me separate my client from this individual. If she had anything to do with it, chances are she can give us more information, and therefore we can get a conviction. And she'll probably have to do some time.
Could have been terms of her bail though too, because aren't they both out on bail?
They're both out on bail now, and
the judgment, it may have said, look, what we're pretty convinced that you have done is you work together to hide evidence of some other crime,
right? And
therefore, we can't have both of you out and continuing to work together to build your defense. That this is going to have to be stipulations of your bail. And I don't know for certain that this is how it went down or if it's even a possibility. But my guess is, they can put stipulations on you're not allowed to leave the county. You're not allowed to leave this certain area.
Both of them have monitors on.
Yeah.
But yeah, what I don't know if I heard this or if I read this, but I want to say though that it was her lawyer's doing of this guy cannot contact you, which again makes me feel like they're going to divide and conquer, which good, we'll get more answers. But yes, there are some similarities, and at some point he was doing an interview in his house, and it's like if you watch Gone Girl, that's the whole big thing is he has to go on TV and do an interview, right? And so you see those similarities, and then you see the similarities of, he had a girlfriend and all this stuff, but there's also a lot of differences. The main character in Gone Girl, the wife that went missing, didn't have 5 children. So was not going through a divorce hearing, was not going through a custody hearing. And that's also a weird thing because they keep having these custody hearings even though she's not showing up. So I don't know if that's a way if law enforcement or the courts think or I don't know, maybe that's just the rules that we just have to keep going. But it's like, this person's missing. Why are we still having these custody battles? And so I think that's another thing that comes into play. I also think, I'm not for certain, but I think when Jennifer went away to write and she went to Colorado and she went to Los Angeles, that I don't think she had kids at the time. So, it's one thing to go, backpacking in Europe or Australia when you're 18 with no responsibilities and no kids. And maybe you didn't even tell too many people about it and you're gone for a year. That's a lot different than somebody going missing or going backpacking in Australia for a year and not telling anybody when you have 5 kids. So I see some of the similarities. I think the thing about the Gillian Flynn thing is that her what she came up with in her book, yes, it's fiction. But I think it's also based off of a lot of reality. A lot of the storyline, like I said, at some point, a lot of that stuff was based off of, or loosely based off of Scott Peterson. And she even said that she used similar things in her story as the Scott Peterson case. So that's where it's like that she's appalled that they would even bring this up. It's like, well, so much of your story is based off of actual reality. You know what I mean? So it's like, maybe you should. I think that was the interesting thing. But I think the fact that that Gillian Flynn actually responded and said something, it actually puts more eyeballs on the case, puts more ears on the case, and that's good because we have a missing person and maybe somebody saw something. They also have surveillance footage, I believe, of Jennifer's apartment, where they have two individuals on surveillance around her apartment. So if we can, I mean, that we shouldn't just assume that that's Foodis and his girlfriend, but it wouldn't surprise me if it was, obviously. I mean, because then that's pretty damning. You have two individuals on surveillance at her apartment. You have blood evidence, a mixture inside her apartment and her faucet. Does he claim that he was ever in there? We have blood splatter, possibly more evidence in the garage that they're not telling us about.
It almost seems like, from the wording of this article, not the wording of the actual detectives involved, because I don't know. I don't know how sometimes these things can get misconstrued, and they're not quoting investigators here, but it seems like they may believe that the assault or the murder took place in that garage. Is that's the way I read it when I'm reading this article here.
Right.
And they do go on to say that Fotis has been banned from seeing his children, and this is one of the stipulations of his bail, of being allowed to walk around a free man for now.
Yeah, the other weird thing was they kept on showing clips of Gone Girl, and there's the kind of famous scene where the wife is setting up the scene to make it look like she was murdered in the kitchen, and she's basically taking blood of hers and like putting it all over the kitchen floor, and then like rolling in it, and very psychotic type scene. But as they're showing this scene, it's kind of a upscale, new type kitchen, right? And then they cut to the interview with Foodis, and his kitchen looks very similar. Where I was like, oh, that's odd. That's creepy. Even though obviously it's just a modern kitchen. But anyways, it's interesting. I think they have a lot on him, on this Foodis individual. It's very sad that we have a mother of 5 that went missing, and somebody that was extremely talented and extremely smart. So not a lot. I don't think there's enough to even probably cover this, but it's in the papers. It's fascinating, and I'll be following it, and hopefully we get some kind of good result. I mean, heck, on some level you kind of hope for this ridiculous theory to almost be correct. That maybe she just, because of the divorce, because of the custody battle, because of the kids, because of all this stuff happening, that this lady just needed to take a break, and that she's going to come back and just say, I needed a break for a minute. And that would be the best outcome. I just don't think the evidence points to that.
Well, and according to my good friend Webster, the major difference between a manuscript and a book is that the manuscript is yet to have been published. So that seems to be major deciding factor when one were to deem something a manuscript rather than a book.
Well, not to sound, like that I believe in this theory too much, but when they talked about that she wrote this thing, I started thinking, well, Gone Girl was this bestseller, right? Lady goes missing. Her estranged husband's arrested. It becomes at least a local story. Then, obviously you don't know that they're going to apply this Gone Girl theory, but if you wrote a book that's so similar that the husband brings it up, and now this gets national world attention. If this book was published, I know a lot of people that would go out and want to read it. So, therefore, by going missing, you're actually promoting some work that you did, and that leads more to the theory too. But if you're saying, well, manuscript just means it's not published, well, then that kind of blows that theory out of the water.
I would be shocked if she were found alive. I would be shocked if I don't know how it will work when it does finally go to court.
Right.
Because it actually looks to me here, at this point, they're not technically charging him with murder, right? They got other charges that they're going to push forward.
Right. And they're gonna win on those.
I think so, yeah.
And I think they're really just trying to put some heat to the feet of Futis. Right?
Well, and the Michelle woman.
Yeah.
Because you got to think that at some point, if you crank up the fire hot enough, one of them might turn on the other if, in fact, they both are fully aware of what actually took place.
Yeah.
And it seems to me like you can put him there at the scene. And again, I just go back to the incredibly low probability that his blood and her blood is applied to the same item inside her apartment and applied within such a short time frame that the blood is referred to as mixed.
Right, but to have sponges, and I don't know what else they found, but they found multiple items. When you find sponges and you're dumping stuff in dumpsters and storm drains, that's all the evidence I need to feel like this is not going to turn out well, and then you kind of go, well, I wish this theory was true, and I wish she would come back. The evidence is just pointing in a different direction.